Chapter 10, Organizing Your Presentation. The quick overview, we're going to look at the introduction to your presentation, the body of it, the conclusion, and the references. And you'll hear me say many, many times, say your references out loud and get them in the outline. I'm saying that now because so many students forget this. Historically, this is the biggest problem with speeches. Please remember to mention where you got the information from, and we'll cover that in just a few more minutes. So the introduction. The introduction is the very first part of your presentation. This is where you got to get your audience into this immediately. You got to gain and maintain the audience attention, and it's got to be quickly. So let's take a peek here. We're gonna cover all these individually, so don't worry about this so much on this slide. So gaining and maintaining audience attention often comes at the beginning of the speech. And I'm not going to say often, it always comes at the beginning of the speech. You have to maintain the attention to throughout the speech. That is very, very important. You can have a phenomenal opening. Hey, everybody, here's $100, and give them the most boring speech in the world. And guess what? That $100 wears off real quick. They're going to be excited until they're bored. So you have to maintain that audience. So here's some ideas. Bring to the presentation a relevant object or person. Well, you're not going to have time for that in your informative speech. In your persuasive speech, you may actually bring something called a PowerPoint or a Prezi, so that will actually help out. You can invite your audience to participate. Now, if you're going to do this, you're going to talk to me about it because there's some issues with that in the classroom. If you're out in the public, there's a whole lot of different things that go on with activities. Let your clothing relate to your presentation by wearing a logo or a statement or a baseball cap or a helmet if you're talking about motorcycle safety or bicycle safety. You can start with sight or sound. If I clap my hands, that means something's about to happen, or maybe you can have a buzzer or something. You can have a flag. I've never had anybody do that, but I always mention it. Nobody brings one, but it can be done. You need to arouse your audience's curiosity. Set a shoebox on the table and say, whatever's in this box, well, and then you leave it as a question mark, and you can have fun with that from there. You can role play. Now, do this with yourself. Say, I'm going to have a conversation with myself. Everybody check this out. There's all kinds of different ways to do this. I disagree with a short video in a 5-minute speech. In a longer speech, absolutely, it works. With a 5-minute speech, you really don't have time for a short video. In the group speech, we'll talk about it because we have a lot more time to do things in that speech. You can use a brief quotation of a famous person or something that just catches your attention that you know will catch the audience's attention. Make sure you tell the audience the reference of where it came from. State facts and statistics that really jump out and get people. 99.9% of all people who've done this survive eating. Okay, and the 0.01%, they choke to death. Well, we can save them through the Heimlich. That's the purpose of my speech today. I'm going to teach you about the Heimlich maneuver. I got these statistics from, and then you tell them where you got it from. Self-disclose. Be careful about this. Self-disclosing is one of those personal issues. Some people have no problem, whether they have filters or they just believe it's just a thing that they have to say. But please, talk to me about it beforehand, and I'm going to ask you what could be the consequences of you self-disclosing whatever it is you're going to do. Because it may be innocuous or innocent, or it could be pretty serious stuff. So please be careful of that. You can also tell a story or a narration. Remember, people, human beings, us, we love to hear stories. And some people are really good storytellers. Once upon a time, back way in the day, and have fun with it. You can really do some good things with this. So brainstorm your ideas and examples and see what happens. So arousing the audience interest, this is the second function of introduction, is you got to get people into your subject matter. You have to do this in a way that shows them how they can relate to the topic or how the topic relates to them. If we talk about healthy eating and organic foods versus GMOs, well, guess what? GMOs will eventually kill you according to, and then you have to state the blog that said that, versus organic, which, and then you go and say, according to Johns Hopkins University and studies over time, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you say the references. You need to get people into it, and you need to keep them aroused. Stating the purpose of the thesis. This is the third function in the introduction of your speech. Some sample statements right here. Identity theft, we've had this done a lot. Identity theft can be avoided. And I'm going to explain 5 methods that can help you easily implement these things. And this is good for an informative speech. My audience should recall at least 3 of the 5 methods by which they can avoid identity theft. This is good for informative speech too. Now, for persuasive speech, I'm not going to get into these heavily, but just take a peek at these to see the difference between informing and persuading. So after listening to me today, you will be more eager to join our movement to change the grading system at this college. That's persuasive speech, and that's also a good thesis statement. Another one is, my audience will understand why the grading system at this college should be changed and why it will help for them to make that change. One is we can, pass with higher grades and get into the next thing. And nobody fails. That would be a great thing. But you need to then have a good speech beyond that. We're going to talk more about thesis in class too. I'll have a presentation live for our Wednesday night class on this. Establishing your qualifications. This one gets a little confusing. Why are you a credible speaker about this topic? Well, here's why. You can talk about your experiences. You can talk about your research. Now, don't get hung up on research. Research is going on Google and saying, Siri, help me out find this, or Google, find this, or whoever you're using at home, whoever we talk to these days, or just opening a book or a magazine or a news article or something on YouTube, Snapchat, blogs, anything you have. You did it, you're presenting it, and make sure you tell the audience where you got the information from, called your reference. You can also identify the experts you interviewed. This doesn't happen a whole lot unless you're working with people. You're usually not going to go out and make an appointment with a city prosecutor if you're talking about how to strengthen or weaken laws to help or hurt people in certain conditions. So that's something you can do if you're really passionate about your topic and it can further your own career and your own academics, then go and do it. But other than that, you can go on YouTube and that's an interview because there's a ton of interviews that are already done for you. You can also discuss your own education and training in a subject. If you're a lifeguard, you can talk about your own training and what it took to do it and how it helps other people. If you are a bartender, you can discuss your own education, how you took a 6-week training course. If you're a 7th grader, you can talk about your own education and training in the subject matter of surviving middle school. Because, do they have a class on that? They might. But whatever it is, your background, tell us about it. Tell us how you got the training. Forecasting, development, and organization. This is the 5th function of an introduction. You need to tell people what you're going to tell them so they're not surprised by it. So in your thesis, 3 strong reasons exist why you should eat breakfast in the morning. I'm going to tell you about breakfast and why you should eat it in the morning. Okay, so I'm an audience member. I hear that. It sounds interesting. Credibility statement by the speaker is, I have spent the last 3 weeks in the library researching this topic and have also interviewed an expert in the area of nutrition. They sound pretty credible. They did some research. They talked to an expert, but I wonder if they actually eat breakfast too. I wonder if I should. So there's all these questions going on in the listener. Then the topic development forecast. First, breakfast is a very great way to jumpstart your metabolism every day. What's a metabolism? Well, you might have to explain that. Second, students who eat breakfast are healthier than students who don't. Who's your audience in the room? Students. You're now relating it to them. Finally, students who eat breakfast also perform better in school. Not only have you related it to students, by telling them if they eat breakfast, it's going to help them perform better in school. Now you get to build your speech from here. And this is pretty good forecasting in this. Now, avoid some common mistakes. These things, I see it often. I tell people, please don't do this. So please pay attention to this. Avoid saying, I've never done this before, or I could be more nervous than I am right now, or I'm not used to speaking in public. Don't say that. We may know that you are. You know that you are. Just skip that fact, okay? It's easy to say, hard to do. Just don't say the words out loud. In your mind, before you even get out of your seat, don't even tell yourself that. At home when you're prepping, I've never done this before, but I'm sure going to give it a good shot. Turn it around. I couldn't be more nervous than I am right now, and I'm going to turn that nervous energy into excitement and passion. I'm not used to public speaking, so maybe I'll wear clothing that'll hide the sweat marks when they show up. Whatever it is you have to do, you can overcome these common mistakes, and we'll talk about these on Wednesday too. The other thing is, I didn't have much time to prepare this speech. That's telling me, the instructor, that your grade's going to be lower because your speech is not going to be so good. And that's also not a good sign as a student too. So be careful of that one. I'll know if you didn't prepare it, but generally most speeches, there's some preparation. And I have had students literally run into the bathroom 10 to 15, 20 minutes tops before a class and write out their outline literally on toilet paper, the brown hand towels. Couldn't believe it. First time, now I can joke about it. The other thing is, I couldn't find enough information on my topic. Well, we're not even going to let you get there because we're going to be talking about this in class beforehand, and I'm going to ask you, how much information do you have? So that won't even happen. But you'd be surprised how many times you've heard this and how many times you will hear this in the next 2 to 4 years as long as you're in school. The body of the speech. The principles of outlining. This is used to prepare but not deliver your presentation, okay? This is something that, by the way, you're giving to me, your finished version, and you're using it to help develop your ideas even further. There's 6 outlining principles we're going to look at right now. The first one is link the outline to the purpose, and your outline is an abstract of the message. So link the outline to the purpose. All of the items and content in your outline should be directly related to your specific purpose and thesis statement. So in other words, no waste. 5 minutes sounds like a lot of time, but if you get off track for 30 seconds on each one, you're over a minute and a half. On top of the 45 seconds that you have going, which we'll talk about that too, because we don't want to utter those words. We want to look smooth and as close to professional as we can. So when considering your focus for each main point, examine your thesis and decide if the content is directly related to your specific purpose. I guarantee you it will be, because we're going to be working on that in class too over the next couple of weeks before your speech. So during that, we will fix those things. So your outline is an abstract of the message. You're not going to use every word in your outline. You're actually going to use more words and words that are associated with your outline. Your outline is just kind of the sketch pad. Your presentation is the finished book, if you will. So the outline is just basic stuff. Your presentation is the formal stuff. I simplified that, but I think that works. Each sentence in the outline is a single idea, period. Don't have complex, don't have comma, ands. One sentence. Breakfast is good for you. Breakfast is simple to make. Breakfast is cost effective when you eat at home versus going out. That was 2 things. So break it down into one simple thing. Also, your outline, now this gets a little crazy when you think about this, but when you see an outline, you'll actually understand this. The symbols in your outline, so the Roman numerals, the 1, 2, 3, the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3, depending how you do it, whether they're caps or lower, the way it's designed, the Roman numerals are the most important thing. In other words, the header, the chapter title, if you will. The second most important thing are what we call the subtopics. The third most important are the subtopics or the subpoints. So we'll be looking at the outline too. I will be actually printing one out for you, and there is one on and in the week 2 folder. So you'll be able to print that out. And we will be using those in class 2 to develop speeches. Using parallel form sounds a little weird, but it's not. If you're writing a sentence outline, don't go to keywords. Don't go to paragraphs. Stick to the same form from line to line to line to line. So don't go keyword, full sentence, paragraph, keyword, full sentence, paragraph. If you start in full sentences, stay in full sentences. If you use keywords, stay in keywords. Your outline margins signal importance. So in other words, think about those Roman numerals. Here's that outline I was saying that you're going to see. The Roman numerals, the header, the subpoints, and the subpoints. So the further indented it is, the less importance it is to the overall speech. So say you know you're running out of time because, oh my gosh, I thought this great idea and I got to tell them. And you go off for about 30 seconds to a minute. And oops, what do I cut out now? Because you don't want to go over. Even though it's important, you don't have to put it in unless it's absolutely important. The A's and the B's you have to have. The 1s and the 2s, you can shorten them down just a little bit. It could just be a stated fact or a statistics with your reference stated out loud. Types of outlines, there's 3 of them. The rough draft. This is the doodle. This is the beginning thoughts. This is pen and paper, pencil and paper, chalkboard, tablet. This is talking into your recorder if I was just talking right now. So I have an idea for a rough draft on a book that I'm working on, and it's going to involve these 7 items. And then I would just go through it and I would go back and then retype it. So the rough draft is just a preliminary organization of the outline. It's not the brainstorm. It's after the brainstorm and once you pick out your idea. This is where, well, this is the author uses, it's a great point. You assemble your main points, subpoints, and sub-subpoints with your audience and purpose in mind. Sample rough draft is right here. Again, they use keywords. The reason you want to use keywords, you can get things down on paper or on the screen faster if you're typing. If you sit there and go, oh, I have to have a proper sentence, and what should this sentence look like? And, oh, geez, I don't know. And just put the word down. History. What is history? Oh, wow. There's origin. Who was involved in history? And when was it? And, oh, wow. So I could go origin, when, who. So think of the journalistic questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are good things to think of. You don't need all of them, but it really helps out. The sentence outline is probably right after that rough draft. This is where you're really starting to flesh out your ideas. You're adding meat to the bone, if you will. It may not contain every word delivered in your speech, nor should it. I get a lot of outlines that are the speech, word for word for word for word for word for word, and that is not the proper outline. That is called my speech notes. And if you were reading on a teleprompter, that's what they read. But we don't want that. The sentence outline is full ideas. You may say the sentence and then add on to that. So the sentence outline is a good thing to do, but it's after the rough draft. After the sentence outline, well, actually, let's look at the sample sentence outline. So here it is again. We have the 1, the A, B's, and C's, and then the 1, 2's. So you can see this. We'll just skip to this one in the conclusion. Eating breakfast every day will make us healthier. Eating breakfast every day will improve our performance in classes. And eating breakfast should be just as important to our daily schedules as taking a shower. Guess what? There's no subpoints on those because the sentence said everything you have to be. So part of the sub-subpoints, there's that reference again. And remember, whenever you say, I got this from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, issue number 52/4, volume 3 on, well, you don't need to go that deep. And again, we'll talk about references. It's a really challenging thing, but it's not that hard once you know how to do it and practice it. It's always about practice too. The keyword outline, this is a nice shorty. This is if you have the gift of gab. I can use a keyword outline really well if I know my topic. If I don't know my topic, I'm probably going to go to the sentence outline. But if I'm just talking about this gives me ideas. Now, in a 5-minute speech, a keyword outline can be kind of tough, but maybe not, because here's the thing. When you're up in front of the class at the podium feeling nervous, you're going to have your speaker notes. We're going to show you those here in just a moment. You're not going to have your outline. You don't need your outline. I get your outline. That way, if I wanted to follow your speech, I can. One of the things I do, and when I watch your videos, I'll actually look at the outline to see if you followed your outline. If you deviated and went down another path, well, it's going to show up real quick. We'll also know it real fast when it's being spoken out loud. Organizational patterns. There's 4 of them in developing your speech. The first one is the time sequence. This is if you're talking about the history of something. So think about the past, okay? So in the early years, and then the not so early years, the middle years, and then now in the modern times. And I'm not going to go through all the Ford stuff, but we've had people do cars and trucks. We actually had a guy do all the Ford trucks from 1970 or something. It was really funny. He did a great job though, but it was time sequence pattern, except that he listed out 30 or 40 trucks. I thought, well, that kind of killed it for time, which tells me he did prep, but he was kind of nervous. But it worked. It was effective. It's a little boring for everybody, because I think there was a lot of Chevy people in the room. Cause and effect. This is a biggie. This is often used for persuasive speaking. It is good for informational too. If we're talking about smoking has physiological effects on heart and blood, then we're going to talk about carbon monoxide, how it increases while oxygen depletes when you smoke. So again, one thing, then the other, this thing, then the other, this thing causes that thing, this thing causes that thing. If you smoke, you're going to die, and here's why. If you smoke, it's going to be expensive before you die, and here's why. If you smoke, you're going to stink, and nobody's going to befriend you if you have all non-smoking friends. And here's why. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with cause and effect. Really, really good for persuasive, but it can be for informational too. Sample problem solution. This is a really good one for persuasive speaking. We're not going to go through all these right now, but basically, here's the problem and here's the solution. You want to lose 2 to 5 pounds? Great. Here's how you're going to do that. Done. Pretty simple stuff. Informational, yes. Persuasive, absolutely. Topical sequence pattern. This is great for informational. You can also turn this into persuasive too. We've had a lot of global warming and climate change speeches in the last 2 to 3 years now, since it's been a hot topic in the news and the politics and, well, our lives. So this is just giving information. The biggest problem we had with these that I can remember is they weren't citing the resources or the reference, which makes me not believe that it's a real topic without the references. Now, I know who's done what and how on this stuff. There's a lot of people that have had their finger in the pie on this one. I actually know a scientist who knew the scientist who was on the committee, and there was a lot of fun stuff with that. But when I heard something that contradicted what I was told, and they didn't give the reference, so I thought maybe the student was making it up, and I asked him afterwards, and he said, well, I just kind of know that, but I didn't know where I got it from. Well, that's how you research a little bit. You have to figure out where the information came from. Unfortunately, when you spout out information that is important, that's integral, to be credible, you have to say, I got this from the UNESCO World History site that glaciers across the world are melting everywhere. Not totally true, according to, and then you can go to a YouTube video with a Swedish scientist who's been studying this Antarctic glacier, which actually it's doubled in size or something. Really a weird phenomenon. But anyway, you got to look at all that stuff. Transitions and signposts. This slide is nuts. I would never do this, and I'm just going to blame this on the publisher, the McGraw-Hill companies. They didn't do this. We have a new one coming up for fall. This will not be in it like this. I would definitely do this wrong. And if you do one like this too, I'm going to tell you, don't do it like that. It's too much information. Sample signposts are this. Basically, yield, stop, turn right on red. It's telling you where you're going, where the audience is going. First, I'm going to illustrate this. A second idea is this. Look at this bar graph. Another reason for this information and my topic is this. See what you think of this evidence before you make up your mind. Finally, we're going to talk about this and wrap up everything. These things are really good for signposts. Transitions are not jumping from topic to topic, but taking your passenger safely down a road without the bumps. How's that? Now, if you're a great writer, you know about going from paragraph to paragraph. If you have a change in thought, you leave a double space, or you end the chapter and start a new one. So transitions and signposts are really, really good. Just think of this. A transition typically includes a brief flashback and a brief forecast that tells your audience, or I'm just going to use your passenger along for the ride when you're moving from one point to another so they don't get jarred and go, what? Did I fall asleep? Did I have a stroke? What? You want to help them out with that. Signposts are ways in which the presenter, you, signals to your audience where the presentation is going next. So now that I told you about A, I'm going to tell you about B. And then at the end of that, now that you've heard all about B, I'm going to relate that to C. Now that you've heard all about that, now that you've heard about A, B, and C, we can wrap this all up together to see how this equals success or whatever it is that you're talking about. Very, very important on this. This should be a natural thing, but for some reason when people write speeches, they forget that you might have written this over 3 to 4 days or 3 to 4 weeks, and you're working on 3 or 4 different ideas. They have to blend together. Note card tips. Got to be careful with note cards. First thing is practice delivering with them. You have to hold them and get used to moving them around. You need to be neat and legible. You need to only write on one side of the card. If you write on the second side of the card, the people in your first row or two might actually start to try to read it, which is a distraction. And if you forget which way you're turning it, it could be really bad too. Always number your cards. If you've ever seen somebody drop their note cards, or if unfortunately you've ever dropped your note cards, it is a very infuriating, frustrating, scary, stressful thing. And we don't want that to happen. Now, you can use a ring. Paperclip, I would not advise, because paperclips flip off and maybe somebody could lose an eye in the front row. So be careful of that. But generally, attach those cards. Get them some way, shape, or form that they're together on those. Real quick on note card tips. 3x5s are great. 4x6s are awesome, unless you're in the footage. Make sure it's in inches, okay? Unless you're using a poster, then you might need 1 or 2 posters, but we've never had anybody in 6 years use posters. So that is the body of your presentation. The conclusion, the ending, because we're almost done. Well, not quite. We have about 8 more slides. See how we did that? I forewarned you that the end is coming, but there's 4 functions that we need to look at. The first of the 4 functions is to warn the audience that the end of the presentation is near. You don't want to go, and thank you very much for your time, and I'm out of here. Goodbye. Then they're, wait, I want to know more. Or you just it's the end of a movie. You ever get to the end of a movie and it's just, what? Well, they do that a lot now because they want you to go to the sequel. You're not doing a sequel to this. You're doing a one-timer. So 5 minutes is hardly enough time to consider all of the implications of this issue. Ooh, that's kind of sounding like the speech is going to end. Plus, we know we've been sitting here for a little while. Thus, people have the potential for much greater role flexibility when our society encourages more gender flexibility, blah, 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 blah. Something. So, thus is a good word. Therefore is a great word. Therefore, based on what I've told you, you now have new knowledge that can help you live healthier, wealthier, and longer lives. Thank you very much for your time. I'm out. Well, not quite. Remind the audience of the central idea and main points. This is restating the thesis. Restate that main points. Remind your audience of those things that you want them to remember. If you tell people what you told them at the end, now I'm not talking about adding in all your references again and all your subpoints. You already did that. So just remember these 3 things about eating breakfast in the morning. It'll help your metabolism. It'll help maintain your energy throughout the morning. And it'll help you save money if you eat food at home instead of going out to eat every single morning and buying extras and supersize me's and all this stuff. This is just summarize what you told us. It's actually an easy thing to do. Just go to each topic, pull out the main theme, and there it is. Pretty simple, right? The third thing is to specify what you expect audience members to think or do as a result of your presentation. I hope you all enjoyed sitting here for 5 long minutes is not the way to do it. Now that you've heard all my information over the last 5 minutes, you have more tools in your toolbox to go out and be successful. Okay? Pretty simple way to do it. Again, whatever your style is, you have your own unique style that only you have. You can copy, you can plagiarize. Well, we'll say plagiarize. You're going to collaborate with somebody else's ideas, or you're just going to go off the cuff. You don't know what you're going to do until you do it. But whatever it is, it's your style. So remind the audience what they should think or do. Now, if you're going to tell them what to do, it's persuasive. If you want to just remind them of certain things, try this. Remember a few of your important points in the speech and say it out loud. If you want people to sign a petition, you can do that. That's more persuasive. Or if you want them to go out and actually talk to somebody, that's also persuasive. But let's just say you're talking about making changes in the government or making changes to climate change, and you need to actually write a letter. You might tell them, and here is the address and the name of the person that you can write to, and a sample letter. All you have to do is type it or handwrite it in your own words, sign it, I don't even know what the cost of stamps are anymore, send an email or send a snail mail, whatever it is, and off you go. Thank you for listening very much. Hope we all change the world. Something. You end it. Rhetorical questions are good. If you don't know what a rhetorical question is, it is a question that you don't expect an answer from. Okay? If you want a direct answer, then you need to ask that. So knowing what you know now, will you feel safe riding with a driver who has had a few drinks? Interesting point, isn't it? You're not looking for an answer. Now, if I want them to know, you in the first row, second seat over, do you feel safer now with the information you have? Interesting. but you're not doing that. Consider quotations, just like they used here. As John F. Kennedy said, forgive your enemies, but never forget their names. Thank you very much for listening. Different. That one, you make sure you summarize before you get to that. Consider the action. A student who did a speech on engineering assembled an electric motor for the class and showed that it worked. Pretty good idea, according to the publisher. We've had informational Mexican Halloween. They brought in the sugar skull. We've had Bigfoot. Well, there was no Bigfoot, but there was evidence on the screen with references of the sites that the person got it from. Because remember, I love conspiracy theories. That's why John Kennedy in here. Who killed Kennedy? We still don't actually know. Think of ending the speech in a compelling way. Make it memorable. How would you feel if you were in the audience hearing yourself give your speech? Does it make you feel good, bad, indifferent? Makes you want to run out of the room, pulling your hair out, going, oh my gosh, I never want to hear that again. How does it make you feel? That's how you want to end that speech. How do you want your audience to feel? Sample conclusions here. Again, this is don't text while driving. This one is a moldy oldie, but you know what? I still like it because it's current. There are more people texting every single day. There was an old lady coming around the corner at me, talking on the phone and up to her ear, driving one-handed, and I thought she was going to front end me. It was just, she didn't even look at my car. She was looking at the curb, but it's just not good. That's even texting while driving. So this is always a current topic to me, cell phone distractions. Now they have eating and driving can get you pulled over. So, I mean, what's next? If you blink, are they going to pull you over for that? Well, in the self-driving cars, maybe that's where they're going to do it. Remember the 4 functions of the conclusion. References, the biggie references. In the references, these are the sources that you used in your presentation. Sources are things and places and events and people where you got your information from. If you saw information on the back of a bus while you were driving downtown to whether it's Akron, Cleveland, Kent, Twinsburg, wherever it is, and you saw something on the back of the bus that made you go, I want to use that, and you use it, where did you see it? To state, on the back of the bus on Route 91 heading northbound the other day, I saw on the Parta bus this ad, and it was for probably human trafficking, and I can't even remember if that was the bus, but I know that one's out there. I didn't even know that was a thing a couple years ago until it was big. Now it's everywhere. It's on billboards. There's a billboard on 480 that is up by Lamar Advertising. So then you can just toss in these references. Just let them out. It's okay to do, and you have to do it. Now, whether you use APA, MLA, or Chicago style, it's up to you. I'm an APA kind of person. If you're MLA, go with MLA. If you don't know what kind of style you have, ask me. I will try to help figure your academic career out because some people are going to go MLA, business. If you're going psychology education, we are definitely APA. Chicago style, I can't help you with that one. Chicago style to me is pizza. If you want to know more about it, take an English class where they teach that or Google it. See what happens. References, there's a lot of ways to do it. Look them up. Go on Google, or actually go on the Kent State website, look at our writing commons. You can do that. I like Purdue OWL. It's Purdue as in the University of Purdue, and OWL, O-W-L. And you can Google that, Purdue OWL. I think it's .edu. It's the one I use. It's the strongest one. I've been using it for 10 years, 12 years now. It's amazing. It shows you exactly how to cite the reference. It's really a neat thing. So it can actually help out for other papers in any of your other classes. Remember, oral citation is providing the name of the source, how recent the information is, and the source's qualifications during your speech. Now, when we talk about the source's qualifications, that might be kind of hard to do. So look at it like this. In the New Yorker, I found this story on global warming. And it was written by, I'm just making this guy's name up, John Smith. And John Smith has been writing about these things for about the last 6 months. Well, I don't know that. So you don't really need to stay his credibility. It could be a blogger. Hey, John Smith on his blog was talking about Bigfoot and how he supposedly has this picture of Bigfoot. And if you go on his YouTube channel, you can see it. It's, of course, the camera's bumping and blurring, and it's kind of off in the corner behind a bush. And they do one still frame, and it looks like a tree. That can work too, because you say where you got it from. All right, that's it for Chapter 10, make sure you take the quiz as soon as you can. I would do it right now, actually, if you can. Get it done while the stuff is fresh. You might not